Greetings to all. Welcome to PCM Under One Roof, our YouTube channel. The purpose of this video is to explain equivalent weight and N factor as well as how to calculate them using hydrogen, oxygen and chlorine. Let us first review the definition of equivalent weight of an element. This is defined as the mass of an element that combines or releases 1 gram of hydrogen or 8 grams of oxygen or 35.5 grams of chlorine. In this case, one equivalent is equal to 1 gram of hydrogen or 8 grams of oxygen or 35.5 gram of chlorine. For example, if 32.5 grams of zinc react with 8 grams of oxygen, then the equivalent weight of zinc is 32.5 grams per equivalent. In the case of oxygen, one equivalent is equal to 8 grams. As another example, let us consider the following. If 32.5 gram of zinc evolves 35.5 gram of chlorine, the equivalent weight of zinc is 32.5 gram per equivalent. One equivalent here corresponds to 35.5 grams of chlorine. In order to better understand this concept, let us solve some problems. A reaction between zinc and sulfuric acid produces zinc sulfate and hydrogen. For this reaction, let us calculate the equivalent weights of zinc. A reaction of 65 grams of zinc with 98 grams of sulfuric acid results in 161 grams of zinc sulfate and 2 grams of hydrogen. From 65 grams of zinc, 2 grams of hydrogen are produced. How many grams of zinc produce 1 gram of hydrogen? This is equivalent to 65 divided by 2, which is 32.5 grams. Therefore, the equivalent weight of zinc is 32.5 gram per equivalent. In this reaction, 65 grams of zinc are equivalent to 1 mole of zinc and it evolves 2 grams of hydrogen. Therefore, 1 mole of zinc is equivalent to 2 equivalents of hydrogen. When oxygen, chlorine or hydrogen is involved in this type of reaction, the N factor is defined as the number of equivalences of hydrogen, oxygen or chlorine that are reacted or evolved per mole of substance. Therefore, the N factor for zinc is 2. To clarify the concept, let us differentiate equivalent weight from N factor. The equivalent weight is the weight of the substance per equivalent. For reactions involving oxygen, hydrogen and chlorine, simply equate the mass of the substance to 1 gram of hydrogen or 35.5 grams of chlorine or 8 grams of oxygen. A unit of equivalent weight is gram per equivalent. N factor represents the number of equivalents per mole of substance. The unit of N factor is equivalent per mole of substance. It is relatively straightforward to calculate the equivalent weight when we know the N factor by dividing the molar mass by N factor. Based on the nature of the reaction involved, the equivalent weight of a substance will vary. It is also possible to calculate the equivalent weight of zinc sulfate and sulfuric acid by equating with hydrogen. In this example, 161 gram of zinc sulfate are equivalent to 2 grams of hydrogen. How many grams of zinc sulfate are equivalent to 1 gram of hydrogen? The amount of zinc sulfate is 80.5 grams. Its equivalent weight is 80.5 grams per equivalent. Similarly, sulfuric acid has an equivalent weight of 49 grams per equivalent. 161 gram of ZnSO4 is equivalent to 2 gram of hydrogen, which is equal to 2 equivalents of hydrogen. Therefore, the N factor for zinc sulfate is 2. In the same way, sulfuric acid has a N factor of 2. We will examine the reaction of zinc with hydrochloric acid. In this case, 73 gram of HCl produces 2 gram of hydrogen or 2 equivalences of hydrogen. Therefore, hydrochloric acid equivalent weight is 36.5 grams per equivalence. The N factor for HCl is 1. The equivalent weight of a substance in a reaction involving oxygen must be calculated by equating the mass of the substance with 8 gram of oxygen. In the reaction between zinc and oxygen, 130 grams of zinc react with 32 grams of oxygen. Therefore, 8 grams of oxygen react with 32.5 grams of zinc. This means that the equivalent weight of zinc is 32.5 grams per equivalent. In the same way, the equivalent weight of zinc oxide is 40.5 grams per equivalent. The equivalent weight of a compound can also be calculated by adding the equivalent weights of its atoms. In the case of zinc oxide, zinc has an equivalent weight of 32.5 and oxygen has an equivalent weight of 8. Therefore, zinc oxide has an equivalent weight of 40.5 grams per equivalence. We must equate the mass of substance with 35.5 grams of chlorine for a reaction that involves chlorine. In a reaction involving zinc and chlorine, 65 grams of zinc are reacted with 71 grams of chlorine. As a result, 32.5 grams of zinc react with 35.5 grams of chlorine. Therefore, the equivalent weight of zinc is 32.5 grams per equivalent. In a similar manner, zinc chloride has an equivalent weight of 68 grams per equivalent. Please solve the following additional problems and send me your responses. Thank you.